In today's show, we're looking at rookies in the NBA, the 2023 rookie class, what we're looking at in terms of value for fantasy. Historically, how have rookies performed? Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com. You can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We are available on all platforms. All right. So, over the next week or two, I'm going to be doing 4 videos on young players. This one's on rookies. There's going to be one on second-year players, one on third-year players, one on fourth-year players, to try and look at breakout players and how we can establish whether that's a real thing and guys we can target and all that sort of stuff. Today, we are going to be talking about rookies because that's always one of the most exciting things. The new players coming into the league, we don't know how it's going to work out, and that's the key phrase. That's what you take away from this is we don't know how it's going to work out. It is one of those things where rookies, as a general rule, will get overdrafted by a usual considerable margin, and there'll be random rookies who pop up out of nowhere who step up into larger roles that you don't see coming because of injury, because of performance that you just didn't really expect, or they do things that they that you don't really see from them in college. The other myth around, or not myth, well, this is a myth, but the other one wasn't. The thing around rookies is people always say, well, they're going to hit the rookie wall. And that just isn't true, because the vast majority of rookies get better as the season goes on. Yes, there will be a player who is a rookie who performs worse in the second half of the season than the first half of the season. That will happen. But when we create narratives and biases, which the rookie wall is one of them, and just slap a tag on everybody, it leads to confusion and misinformation. The vast majority of rookies will be better as the season goes on. And when you're in fantasy playoffs, there'll be more rookies who are relevant than there are in November. That's just the way it works. They get better. And while they might get tired and they might get fatigued from playing more games, that is offset by them playing better during that time, as a general rule. So a lot of times with rookies, it's really hard to judge their production because start of the season is usually bad, and then it improves as the season goes on. But can you afford to hold on to a bad player for 3 months, waiting for an injury or a trade or a tank to open things up? And most of the time, the answer is no. So that makes it tough. And I think a lot of the time, if you want a blanket general rule for rookies in fantasy, the blanket rule is don't draft them, because they nearly always will go higher than they should, and then you make the moves to add the guys off the wire, like Walker Kessler, who I went back and looked at my video on this on last season. I had him as a draftable player. I also didn't have Jalen Williams as a draftable player, and we saw how that turned out. Now, of course, I think it was around December when I said, yeah, let's go grab him and see where this goes, and that worked out really, really well. But it doesn't always work out that way. You just got to be nimble and ready to make adjustments with so much in fantasy, and that includes rookies when we're talking about them.
Let's get it on, Gilly.
I already got it on, but you know what, Warner, you can give us a little interlude there. So let's have a look over the last 3 seasons in category leagues. Again, I am defaulting more to talking about -1 rankings for category leagues, defaulting towards head-to-head format. How many players in the last 3 rookie classes have been top 120 players? I don't know why I said 120 that way. Top 120 guys, which in a standard league, 12 teams, 10 starters, is a starting caliber player. How many rookies? Well, last season, it was 2. It was 2 guys who were starting caliber players. One of them was Walker Kessler, and one of them was the Bronco, Jalen Williams.
Broncos country, let's ride.
Of course, both of those guys weren't relevant at all for the first 2 months of the season, but the way they performed as top 40 guys after the break pushed them to be top 120 guys for the season. This is in category leagues. And I think there's something really interesting to take out of this as well, is that the 2022-2023 draft class was considered not very strong at all. We got 2 top 120 players. The 21-22 draft class was considered very strong. We had 6 top 120 players that year. The 2020-2021 season was considered a weak draft class. We had 3 top 120 players that season. Over the last 6 years, the average amount of players who are top 120 guys in category leagues is about 5. So weak classes, you look at 2 to 3. Strong classes, you look at 6 to 7 as a sort of a rule. Doesn't always work that way. This year is a little bit more complicated because it is a very strong draft class. Very strong. But a lot of the guys who I think are going to be very good players are in very strange situations that aren't going to enable them to play big minutes early on. In fact, there might be 2 opening night rookie starters in the NBA. That's all there might be. And that's crazy considering how strong this draft class is. I think in the end, will maybe push up to 5 or so who end up as top 120 guys. I've got a few ideas on that. We'll talk about it soon. We'll probably end up pushing to 5 or 6 because generally tying in good draft class to fantasy production ends up about 5 or 6 of them. But it doesn't always work that way. If we want to take a look at how that might change in a points format, it is a little bit different, but it's not significantly different. Last season, we had 4 top 120 points league guys because like Paulo Banchero jumps into that mix versus where he was pretty rough for a lot of category leagues. Certain builds, you sure, but again, even using -1, he wasn't top 120. And then the 2 other years, it was 6 and 3 as well. So not that big of a difference. And the average for rookie, well, not exactly the same actually, not even, no difference. The average for rookies who are top 120 players in Yahoo points leagues is about 1 extra per season, or a bit over a half per season. So usually it is, if you want to make, again, a blanket rule, it is a little safer, marginally, a little safer to draft rookies in points leagues than it is in category leagues. But that's marginal. You might get 1 extra per year or 1 extra every 2 years in a points league who's a top 120 guy versus a category league player. And that's what I think those numbers there are bearing out. So what does that mean for this upcoming season? Well, let's take a look. Because if we take a look at how things play out for the rookies for the upcoming class, my projections, I have 4 top 120 ranked rookies in -1 ranks, 1 just outside. In my points league rankings, I've got 3 top 120 rookies. Yahoo's ranks, which is very hard to judge because they've got guys like old mate Scoot outside the top 500, so their rookie rankings are all over the shop. But they've got 3 top 120 guys in their rankings. Yahoo's ADP suggests 3 rookies in the top 120. ESPN's rankings have 4 guys in the top 120, and their ADP has 4 guys in the top 120. And Fantrax's ADP shows 3 players in the top 120. So we're all about that same mark, slightly under average, even though this is a strong draft class, where I think that because there's just so many weird situations, like let's just talk about the 2 twins picked at 4 and 5.
I think he's talking to you.
Like, are they averaging 30 minutes a night this season? Almost definitely not. They're both probably going to come off the bench opening night, and it's going to take trades and injuries for them to open things up. There's just so many like that. Is Jarace Walker going to start? Where's Bilal Coulibaly? Is he going to start? Don't think so. There's so many players who are in situations where they're just not going to get the playing time. Is Prestige Penis, Grade A Dick, going to start? I don't think so. There's a lot of these guys around who are just in weird positions in their rotation where it's not going to lead to huge fantasy value. But that's currently how I have it all projected. We're going to go through some individual players in a second. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Get ready for the NFL season with an incredible offer from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5, all customers, not new customers, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use and you can bet on everything from spreads to player props and more. In fact, maybe you want to bet on my Dolphins in week 1 against the Chargers, 2.5-point underdogs on the road, but that's fine. We'll see what we can get done. I don't think we're going to win, but you never know. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer that you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL, and don't forget to gamble responsibly. Okay, so that takes us through the details, the overview of the rookies. Let's talk about the individual players. And we'll start in San Antonio with the big fella, the number 1 overall pick, Victor Wembanyama, who, of course, is going to go high in drafts. It's straightforward. He was the number 1 overall pick in the draft. I've got a couple of things we're going to go through all these players. Like, is Victor, according to my projections, a better player in category leagues or points leagues? And according to my projections, I do have him better, marginally, half a round, better in points leagues. Why? Because I think there might be some rough patches with his field goal percentage at least, and some maybe deficiencies in assists. But I've got him better as a points league guy. I think he's going to have relatively high usage. I'm projecting him to be the starting power forward for the Spurs. I think he is draftable. I would take him probably in round 4 in both formats. But if someone else grabbed him, I don't think I'd care that much. Now, there is a legitimate chance he's a top 15 player. He could average 20 and 10. He could block 3 shots a game. Maybe he shoots really well, hits 1.5 threes. He could do all that. I am a little worried about rests for him and management throughout the season. And I'm worried about some of the efficiency stuff. But he's a round 4 guy to me. The problem is he's never going to be able to get him there. The strengths for Wembanyama for fantasy in category leagues is rebounds and blocks. There is 2 major strengths. Points will come in that into that as well. And I think he's going to have a field goal percentage weakness. I think he'll have an assist weakness. I think it'll be okay, the assist. Will bump up as his career goes on, but I think that's a bit of a weakness early on. And I say you won't get him because Yahoo's got an ADP of 30, so that's middle of the 3rd round, and ESPN's got an ADP of 18, which is the middle of the 2nd round. Well, actually, on ESPN, their default is 10 team, but I'm always going to talk 12. So let's just still say that's the middle of the 2nd round. That's insane, right? He might get to that. Do not draft him there, please. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. I get it. It might be fun to have Victor Wembanyama, and maybe he does get there. But it's going to take a lot, man. It's just going to take a lot for rookies to get there. So I think that maybe this is a common theme, but I think that ADP at 30 on Yahoo and 18 on ESPN, it's too high. 4th round guy, okay, right? I can see that. 3rd, 2nd, not for me. Let's go to another big man. This guy wasn't drafted this season, and it's Chet Holmgren, who was the number 2 pick last season. Of course, he didn't play a single minute last year, so he is a rookie. If you're in a dynasty league, surely he's not in your rookie drafts because that means there's a real problem with the settings in your league. If Chet Holmgren was not drafted last season and stored on a roster, that's a league constitution issue and a problem with your league. So he should not be in any dynasty rookie drafts. But for this season, he falls in the group of rookies. Chet is, I think, going to be better in category leagues than points leagues. He's not going to be a huge scorer, but I think his ability to generate blocks at a high level makes him a better category league guy. I think he starts at center for the Thunder. I don't really think there's any debate about that. I think he is draftable, yes, of course. I think he's probably worth a 4th round go in a category league. Probably more a 5th or 6th rounder in a points league. He's a rebound and blocks are his strengths. His weakness is going to be points and assists. I don't think he's going to be a particularly high scorer, maybe 13, 14 points. And assists, I don't think will be very high. Wembanyama should have him covered in that area. His ADP, and I don't think there's a gigantic difference between him and Wemby for this year, but the ADP is massively different. 43 is Chet's ADP over on Yahoo, and on ESPN at 68. That is actually insane value. I know he's a rookie, but I'd happily take Chet at 68 on ESPN without any problems at all. I think that's tremendous, tremendous value there. That brings us to the next guy, which is one that is very much up in the air.
Jesus God, Sterling.
Yeah, old Scooter. Scoot Henderson, who I made this graphic the first time, and I just blindly went in and on this 2023 draft pick, I just wrote 2. And then I had to go back and change it. So, no, Charlotte's stupid. They didn't actually pick him at 2. He fell to 3. So there was that. I think he's going to be a better points league guy versus category league guy this season. Probably by 3 rounds would be my guess. 3 rounds. I said here projected role as a starting point guard, but I put a question mark. And that's because I don't know what's happening with Damian Lillard. And if Lillard is there and Simons is there, I don't know that Scoot starts. And this is what I mean when I say I don't know how many rookies are going to start opening night. Now, of course, Chet is a different story. He's not from this draft class, but he's part of the rookie group. So he probably extends it. But if Lillard's still there, I don't know that Scoot starts. And that drops his value down significantly. I am working under the assumption that Lillard won't be, but I don't know. Is Scoot draftable? Yes, he is. I do think I've got him there as round 8. That was supposed to be the other way around. Round 10 probably for category leagues, probably round 8 for points leagues. I just think, again, as I said, I think he is a better points league guy than he is a category league guy. So I'd go round 10 for category leagues. My last starter, maybe round 11, although I probably wouldn't slip there. And I'd be okay going to round 8 in points if we understand that the Lillard situation is settled. His strengths are going to be assists. I think his steals are going to be pretty good. I think his scoring is going to be fairly solid as well, but he's going to have a real issue with field goal percentage, and I think his 3-point volume is going to be pretty low as weaknesses. Yahoo's got his ADP at 95, and ESPN's got it at 90, which honestly, for a points league, actually gives him a ton of value. I think in a category league, that's probably about bang on. Probably a little bit later, 110 maybe. You want to look at him, as I said, round 10, possibly as a category league guy. But for a points league, I think there's a lot of value in that. In looking at him around that 95-90 mark, you might even want to go into round 7. And I think that'll be okay, assuming that Lillard is gone. I also expect that if Lillard does get traded, this ADP will probably come in 20 or so spots. But for now, he's not priced at a terrible area. And I do think that for points leagues, he's maybe a little bit under, which is like a genuine surprise. Let's go to Detroit.
I think he's talking to you.
Ausar Thompson, pick 5th in the draft. I think he is going to be a better category league player than he is a points league player, because the numbers that he put up at Overtime Elite, the numbers that he put up in Summer League would indicate all of that stuff. Assists, rebounds, steals, and blocks, very good numbers, but not a particularly high scorer, not a great 3-point guy. Yeah, percentages will be an issue for him in category leagues, but he's going to be able to generate rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, which are a really rare combination of things. I've got him projected to be a reserve wing for the Pistons. I think they are going to open the season almost without question with Bojan Bogdanovic and Isaiah Stewart as the starters. Now, at some point, Ausar, I think, will jump into that starting 5, whether it is Stewart sucks, very likely, or Bojan gets traded. I think that as soon as one of those two things happen, Ausar moves in and starts. But I don't know that. I just don't think that he's going to be there initially, opening night, starting. If they did, they would have to bench Stewart and start Bogdanovic at 4. We'll see whether they do it or not. So I've got him as a reserve wing, but I do think that his path to getting into the starting lineup is not massively hard. I think he's probably more of a round 11 guy in category leagues, maybe round 12 in a points league. I don't think his points league value is super high, but that's your second last pick. I don't care that much. And round 11 for a category league, he's going to be strong in assists and steals. Although assists in Detroit might be a little bit harder to come by. Good out of position blocks too. His scoring and his field goal percentage, though, is going to be a real issue. I think, yeah, he probably doesn't average double-digit scoring, and his field goal percentage might be 40, might be 38. Like, it might be really bad. His Yahoo ADP is 138. ESPN is 129, which it's not far off. That is like round 12 type of numbers. So it's about the right area. You take a flyer with your last pick or two, and hopefully you get something to come off. But all these guys, Victor, Chet, maybe not as much Chet, but Victor, Scoot, Ausar, and Men, who we're going to talk next, it's going to be really rough, especially for the Thompsons early on. I think they're going to be quite poor early on, and drafting them, well, you draft them and you hold them on your bench, and then when you see them playing 20 minutes a night, scoring 5 points a game, you got to look at, well, can I actually afford to hold this until January? And a lot of the times the answer is going to be no. I've got no problem drafting them, but that doesn't mean that they need to be held. You draft them to see what happens. We're talking upside always towards the end of a draft, but you make an early call if you can't afford to hold on to it. That does bring me to talk about his twin brother, Amen Thompson, pick 1 spot ahead at pick number 4. A lot of the same stuff. He's better in category leagues than points leagues. I think he's going to be a reserve guard. Remember, this team is probably, the Houston Rockets, going to start Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks at the 1, 2, and the 3. And then off the bench, it's Kevin Porter Jr. and Amen Thompson. So not only is he probably coming off the bench, almost definitely coming off the bench, that he's going to be not necessarily the first guy off the bench. And then there's Tari Eason in that bench group as well. So while I think Amen Thompson's probably already going to be better than Dylan Brooks and probably better than Kevin Porter and maybe better than Jalen Green really, really quickly, I don't think that the coaching staff in Ime Udoka is going to just change all that up and push him straight into that starting lineup. I don't think it's going to happen at any point soon. And while I think he's okay to draft as a round 12, round 13 sort of a flyer, I think it's going to be an arduous path to getting into value. It's going to take injuries or him just going out and absolutely tearing it up, which is hugely possible, and jumping into a starting lineup. Now, I don't think he's ever overtaking Fred VanVleet, but Brooks or Green or Porter, possible. Much like his brother, assists and steals are going to be strengths. I think he's going to really struggle with his points. I think he'll struggle with his threes, and there's going to be percentage issues as well. His ADP on Yahoo is 139. It's 132 on ESPN, so we're talking late round sort of stuff there for him, round 12, round 13 sort of areas. The next guy we talk about...
Hello.
Yeah, it's Jarace Walker from the Indiana Pacers, the 8th overall pick in the draft. I think that Jarace is probably, and I'm not 100% sure on this, I think he's probably a better player in a points league, but that could easily switch up. But I do have his projections coming out and being slightly better in a points league. I think he starts the season as a reserve forward, but the only guy in front of him there is Obert Toppin.
I don't want to hear any more about Obi-Wan.
And Toppin's not that good. So if Walker shows any level of competence, and Carlisle's not a big rookie guy usually, although he did play Nembhard quite a bit, but he kept Mathurin on the bench all season, there is a chance for him to start and play 30. I think he's a last round pick, Jarace Walker. I think his big strength is going to be blocks. He can be a steals guy. I don't think he's going to score much. I don't think he's going to get good assists, even though he is a decent passer, but there's just Nembhard and Mathurin and, of course, Halliburton are going to get all those assist opportunities. ESPN and Yahoo have both got him ADP outside the top 140. Well, actually, ESPN's got him at 140 and Yahoo's got him at 142. But he's okay to have a look at with a last-round pick. I just don't think that there's significant upside with the way the roster goes, or even with his game. How does it look? So he might actually suck at both percentages. That's possible too. You might be wondering where the number 2 overall pick is from this year's draft. Well, the answer is he's right here. And that's Brandon Miller, who I don't think... Again, we look at him and go, well, he was picked number 2, Josh. That's true. I would have picked him at 6. So I don't come into this and go, well, Miller was picked 2, therefore he's the second best guy and we need to treat him that way, because I didn't think he was. I don't think anything that happened in Summer League suggests that he was. And the way the Hornets roster looks doesn't suggest to me he's going to be treated that way. I think he's going to be a better points league guy than a category league player. I don't think he's going to generate big rebounds or defensive stats or assists. I think he's going to have some issues with shooting, but I think he's going to score an okay amount, and that makes him a better points league guy. I project that he starts the season and maybe ends it as a backup. Steve Clifford does not like to play rookies. He does not at all. And there are multiple options in front of Brandon Miller on the depth chart. PJ Washington was just re-signed. Miles Bridges will be back. Yes, he'll miss the first 10 games. Do you think Steve Clifford will go with Brandon Miller instead of Gordon Hayward as the starting 3 while Bridges is out? I don't. And then, of course, Hayward's there. And then Cody Martin's back. So the team is a little weird. And this is what I mean. I don't know how many rookies start opening night. It might literally be Victor and Chet. Maybe Ausar. Maybe Amen. Maybe Jarace. Maybe it is Miller. Maybe it is Scoot. I don't know. But no one's guaranteed of it. Apart from Victor. And Chet. So I dropped Miller down quite a bit in my recent projections. I still think he's worth a drafting in round 12 or round 13. But I do think it's going to be relatively rough for him. Again, just I don't think he's that good. How does he get 30 plus minutes? Does Steve Clifford want to give him those minutes? And even if he does he translate that into good numbers? I'm very, very far from convinced. I think that his strengths he'll be a good free throw guy. He'll get some threes. I don't think he's going to be a massively strong points guy just because of usage. But when he does play, that will be what he leans on. But I think it's still going to be below average. And I think his field goal percentage will be very rough. ESPN or Yahoo's got him at 125 ADP. ESPN's got him at 106. That's a massive overkill for me. That's like round 8. The Yahoo one's round 10, round 11. But ESPN's round 8. There's no way that I'm taking him around that area. There's too many. That's basically them saying, well, he was the number 2 overall pick, therefore he should have the second highest ADP or second highest rank. Actually, he's 3rd behind Scoot. But I don't see the path for that to happen. The last guy I'm going to talk about in detail here, and it's the last guy I think is probably draftable, and that is the speaker himself, Keyonte George, in Utah. 16th pick in the draft. The reason I say this is because I don't know who their starting point guard is. Is it Colin Sexton? I don't know. Is it Chris Dunn? Is it Taylor Horton-Tucker? Is it Jordan Clarkson and they start Ochai Agbaji next to him? regardless of any of those names that I gave you, none of them are very good. And maybe Keyonte, despite, he had a very good summer league, but it is summer league. Maybe Keyonte outshines all of those guys and gets the nod opening night. I do think that he's probably going to come off the bench and play limited minutes early. But none of those players are foundational guys. Sexton, Horton, Tucker, Dunn. So if the Jazz are struggling again, I think he's going to probably start the second half of the season. And I'd feel all right about holding on to him just to see what happens. I think he's a last round sort of a guy. I think he's going to be a good free throw percentage player. I think his field goals are going to be very bad. I think there's going to be a real problem with that. I think his rebounds will be low. But if he does get a starting spot, you'll get some strong assists, and I think you get some okay scoring. But remember, on this team, it's Larry Markkanen's going to be the number one scoring sort of player, and Jordan Clarkson, of course, as well. His ADP is not particularly high. It's 147 on Yahoo, 140 on ESPN, so taking him in the last round is totally fine. This is just taking a guy and waiting to see what happens in terms of battles through the preseason and where guys look and where their role potentially lands. And that's sort of what I'm looking at for standard leagues. You'll notice there are a few players that were drafted, a lot of them, that I didn't talk about. I didn't talk about Anthony Black, who was pick number 6.
Mr. Black.
I don't think there's any way that Anthony Black is A, good enough fantasy player, or B, gets enough minutes with Fultz, with Suggs, with Anthony, with Harris all there. He'll play a little bit, but I don't think he's going to be playing big minutes. I don't think he's a draftable guy. There's Bilal Coulibaly. Is he going to start over Avdia or Kispert? Is he going to be ready to play minutes? I would say probably not. So I don't think he's going to be worth drafting. Taylor Hendricks. Really like Taylor Hendricks, but he's not going to play ahead of John Collins or Kelly Olynyk or Larry Markkanen. It's going to be a really limited role early on. Kaysen Wallace. I also like him. Shea, Giddy, Williams, Dort. Not going to get the minutes. Micic. I'd probably draft Micic for this year over Wallace. The next guy as a rookie that after Keyonte that I'd consider is Sasha Vezenkov. But even then, that's more of a deeper league one. If you go down the draft, like Jet Howard, I don't think there's any way he's a 12-team guy. Derek Lively, I don't think plays enough. Grady Dick, maybe, but he's going to be behind Gary Trent, and he's probably going to play 21, 22 minutes. Jordan Hawkins literally might not play. Kobe Buffkin might not play. Jalen Hood-Schifino almost definitely won't play. Jaime Jaquez, he probably plays, but I don't think he's a very good shooter. I don't think he's a good contributor across multiple categories, and I don't think his minutes are going to be high. Brandon Pajemski, I don't think he plays. Cam Whitmore, I don't think he plays. Noah Clowney, I don't think he plays. Derek Whitehead, injured. Chris Murray probably plays, backup role. Olivier Maxence Prosper, probably doesn't play early on. Marcus Sasser, probably doesn't play. Ben Shepherd definitely doesn't play. Nick Smith probably doesn't play. Bryce Sensabaugh, I'd hope he would play, but I don't think he will. Julian Strawther, maybe. And Kobe Brown, probably not. I like a lot of these guys, but there's not a huge amount of clear starting spots or rotation roles for these guys. Now, there's going to be arguments from you guys watching this, and there'll be plenty of you out here who say, yes, Josh, Anthony Black should be drafted, or yes, Josh, Coulibaly is going to start for the Wizards, or someone else will come in and say Grady Dick's a great draftable guy, or Jet Howard's going to start over Gary Harris. I know you guys are going to have that thought process. That's okay. I've got 7 guys there. I think probably 4 to 5 of them end up as useful players through the season. Other guys will jump in and out of rotations, and we'll see those sort of things develop. But as good as I think this draft class is, it's not as clear-cut with just so many teaming options that are in great situations. Follow this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on the Odyssey app, and on YouTube. Thumb it up and leave your comments down below. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.